I read a poem recently, and it goes like this. I thought I'd let my doctor check me, because I didn't feel quite right. All those aches and pains annoyed me, and I couldn't get to sleep at night. He could find no real disorder, but he couldn't let me rest. What with Medicare and Blue Cross, I think it's an American poem, what with Medicare and Blue Cross, it wouldn't hurt to do some tests. To the hospital he sent me, though I didn't feel that bad. He arranged for them to give me every test that could be had. I was fluoroscoped and cystoscoped, my aging frame displayed, stripped upon an ice-cold table while my gizzards were x-rayed. I was checked for worms and parasites, for fungus and the crud, while they pierced me with long needles, taking samples of my blood. Doctors came to check me over, prodded and pushed and poked around, and to make sure that I was living, they wired me up for sound. They have finally concluded, their results have filled a page. What I have will someday kill me. My affliction is old age. I think some here can probably relate to that poem, but that really is the theme of the message this morning, old age. The passage which Rose read for us is all about that theme. This chapter, coming at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, which is a book written by a wise man, almost certainly Solomon, King Solomon, writes this, in many ways, beautiful passage describing the aging process. A beautiful language about a not very beautiful thing, or often not very beautiful experience. And it shouldn't surprise us that this book of wisdom addresses the issue of getting older. Psalm 90, a psalm written, I believe, by Moses himself. Psalm 90 reads, "So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." There's benefit. There is something to be gained from appreciating that our days on earth will come to an end. And it's worth considering what that process is like. But it's interesting. This passage, although it's written for everyone, young or old, it might surprise you to realize that this passage is actually written to primarily young people. This is a passage written directly for those who are not yet old. You can see that in the opening verse 1 of chapter 12. "Remember now thy Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them." This passage is primarily written that young people might gain wisdom and that they might understand and remember their Creator while they are still young. I must confess, sometimes in my life I've been frustrated at people who are older than I am. Not all people older than I am, but some. I had a fond idea that surely the Christian life means that as you get older, you get more holy and you get closer to God. And so what that means is surely that the oldest people are the best people. But we all know, don't we, that when we look around, we see that however many are good, godly, elderly people they are, and thankfully there are many, and we can give thanks to God for that. We also know, don't we, that old age does not necessarily mean godliness. It doesn't necessarily mean people are closer to God. Sometimes it can mean the opposite. And I just have three lessons from this passage for us, for both those who are young and those who are old. And the first point links to that last point. As we read these verses, all of us should gain a compassion for those who are older. As I said, as I confessed then, that sometimes I've been frustrated in the past when some Christian older people don't seem to look like it. You could perhaps rightly say, well, wait till you get there. And this passage teaches in some ways that it describes the aging process, and it describes in very poignant language how difficult it is when your body no longer functions like it did before. I can't understand that entirely yet. I can understand it a little bit. I certainly feel older than I did 10 years ago. When I fall over, it means a lot more than it did when I was a teenager. But I don't fully understand old age yet. But this passage helps us to understand. Look at some of the ways it describes the aging process. Look at verse 2. It says, while the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain. Our eyesight starts to fail. We cannot see as well as we could in the past. Not only that, things which gave us joy in the past perhaps don't give us the same joy they do now. The lights are darkened emotionally and as well as physically. I love that expression, the clouds do not return after rain. Speaking of in youth, the clouds do not come after the rain. And the meaning seems to be that when you're young, yes, you may have some affliction, perhaps an illness, but it will pass often. You go through it, and you go through the flu or whatever it is, and then the clouds do not return. You have the sunshine again. But as you get older, the times of sunshine seem less, and you experience the rain, and then the clouds come after the rain. It just feels like one thing after another. That's a description of the aging process. Look again at verse 3. In the days when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men bow down. The preacher here is personifying different parts of the body. And he's imagining that the body parts are like workers. Workers on a building site, or workers in a vineyard, or workers in whatever situation. And he says the keepers of the house are starting to tremble. The strong men bow down. The arms aren't as strong as they used to be. The legs aren't as strong as they used to be. And trembling comes into the limbs. It goes on, and perhaps this one's not difficult to understand. End of verse 3. When the grinders cease, because they are few. I think we can all understand that one, can't we? The teeth start to fall out. We start to need dentures. And the grinders, as it were, become few. It continues. It continues. Verse 4. When the doors are shut in the street and the sound of the grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of a bird and all the daughters of music are brought low. You can't sleep so well. The smallest noise wakes you up, and it's more of a hindrance than it used to be when you were young. You rise up at the voice of a bird, not just of a pneumatic drill. The smallest noise has an effect. Look at verse 5. Also they are afraid of heights and of terrors in the way. Perhaps things which didn't bother you in the past now do bother you. As we get older, we get more cautious. We get more careful. We can't gallop on the heights like we used to. And we see terrors in the way. It's perhaps my favourite one, middle of verse 5. When the almond tree blossoms. I think, well, what's that referring to? Well, those who know what an almond tree looks like when it blossoms, an almond tree in Israel or in the Middle East, it's white. Its head, if you like, is white with blossom. And as we get older, our hair turns grey. It's interesting that almond trees, they blossom, I believe, in February, March time. Now, for us, that's not at the end of the year, but for the Hebrew calendar, it is. The last month of the year is in our February, March time. So not only does the almond tree look white, but also it blossoms at the end of the year. And so it's a beautiful picture of the getting to the end of life. Verse 5 concludes, "For man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets." And then perhaps the most poetic part of the whole chapter says, "Before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well." It sounds very beautiful. What does it mean? Well, a cord is used to tie up something, but this cord is loosed. A bowl is designed to hold things, but this bowl is broken. A pitcher is designed to carry water, but this one is shattered. And the wheel of the well is the thing which turns the rope or the chain which brings the bucket from the water, but this wheel is broken. And it's describing the eventual end of the aging process where we're not functioning, our bodies are not functioning as they once did, and we become like a cord that is loosed, a bowl that is broken, a pitcher that is shattered, and a wheel that is broken. It's interesting that it calls the silver cord the golden bowl, most likely referring to the fact that life is precious, but our life on earth comes to an end. Others have suggested that those four descriptions, and that's, by the way, what the pictures are on the front of your service sheet. Someone suggested that the first two refer to rich people, and the second two refer to poor people. The golden bowl, the silver cord, and then the clay pitcher and the wooden wheel. Either way, whether you're rich or poor, you come to the same thing in the end. Rich people cannot prevent the aging process, no matter how hard they try, as the adverts and the celebrities show us daily. It cannot be prevented in the end. That's the description that this passage gives of the aging process. And as I say, I'm sure there are many here in the building or watching online who can relate to some extent or another. And the first lesson for us, as I said, is we should have a compassion for people who are experiencing this, knowing that we too, if we live, will have to go through it ourselves, and we should be slow to judge others when they are struggling with their memory, with their eyesight, with their hearing. We should have a compassion, knowing that it's coming to us one day in the best of circumstances. Read another poem. It goes like this. "Blessed are they who understand my faltering step and palsied hand. Blessed are they who know that my ears today must strain to catch the things they say. Blessed are they who seem to know that my eyes are dim and my wits are slow. Blessed are they who looked away when coffee spilled at table today. Blessed are they with a cheery smile who stop to chat for a little while. Blessed are they who never say, 'You told me that story twice today.' Blessed are they who know the ways to bring back memories of yesterdays. Blessed are they who make it known that I'm loved, respected, and not alone. Blessed are they who know I'm at a loss to find the strength to carry the cross. Blessed are they who ease the days on my journey home in loving ways." Getting old is no fun, and it calls for our understanding. That's the first lesson from this passage. But that's not really the main lesson from this passage. That's not the main reason that the preacher who wrote this, Solomon who wrote this, they had another reason in view. And that is, this passage is a warning. It's a call to compassion, yes, but it's also a warning. I heard a story of a family who visited Niagara Falls, and it was spring and ice was rushing down a river, and they were viewing these large blocks of ice flowing towards the waterfall. And on these ice blocks, there were like carcasses of dead fish, and birds were coming, gulls were coming and feasting on the carcasses on the ice. And as they approached the edge of the fall, the birds would obviously fly off. But as they were looking, they saw one gull which delayed, and it was getting closer and closer to the fall, and it would not fly off. It was so engrossed in its meal that it didn't see the waterfall coming. Eventually it did see its danger, and it started to flap its wings, but however much it flapped and flapped, its feet had frozen to the ice, and it could not escape, and it plummeted over the edge of the falls with the ice. And the warning there is the danger of delay. And that's really the lesson, the main lesson of this passage. The preacher says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come. We all like to think we've got a long time. We all like to think there's still time to turn to God. Let me have fun now, and then maybe I'll think about my Creator when I'm old. The warning of this passage is you may not be able to when you get old. Even if you live, you may come to a point where you no longer have any desire to know God. Perhaps even you do not have the ability to anymore. Your mind has gone. You do not have the faculties that you once had. And the preacher urges young people and people who feel young still, and he says to them, remember your Creator. Don't delay. Don't leave it. The most foolish thing we can do is neglect our relationship with our Creator. If you ever see something not working, perhaps a fridge at home or washing machine or whatever it might be, what do? Well, you turn to the manual, if you still have it. You see what the manual says. You see what the creator of that thing says. And yet so many people go through life never reading the manual, never listening to what our Creator has to say to us. And the preacher says, don't do that. He urges us, remember God while we still can. The main lesson of this passage is a warning to us. This is all very bleak, isn't it? Perhaps you didn't come to church this morning to be told you're getting old and that the end is coming. But I want to end with a word of encouragement as well. There is encouragement here, although it might take a little time to explain. The book of Ecclesiastes is a strange book. It's one of the most unusual books in the Bible. Sometimes you read the book of Ecclesiastes and you say, is this a Christian book at all? I remember reading a Richard Dawkins book, The God Illusion, which came out about 10, 20 years ago now, I think. And in that book, he says parts of the Bible are beautiful. You know, Richard Dawkins, obviously a world-famous atheist. And he says the book of Ecclesiastes is sublime. An atheist says the book of the Bible is sublime. And it's because the book of Ecclesiastes is very bleak. It seems very bleak all the way through it, even in the passage which Rose read for us. Remember verse 8? It says, "Vanity of vanity," says the preacher, "all is vanity." Solomon, as he writes this book, he says, I got all the pleasure out of life I could. I decided to enjoy music and wealth and comfort and gardens. And all these things I poured my heart into, and I discovered that they didn't bring satisfaction. Everything seemed worthless in the end. He says, I looked at the rich person, the poor person, and I realized that whatever joy the rich person may have, they have to face death as much as the poor person as well. He says even wisdom, even the wisest, the cleverest people, they still experience the same trials as unintelligent and unwise people. And he says it's all vanity. It all seems so pointless. But what we need to understand is the book of Ecclesiastes is written from the point of view of someone who is only looking at life through human eyes. Or perhaps put it better, the book of Ecclesiastes is in a sense written as though the gospel did not exist. I used to say that the book of Ecclesiastes is written as though God does not exist, but that's not true. If you read the book of Ecclesiastes, God is mentioned repeatedly throughout the book. But instead, how Ecclesiastes is written is from the eyes of someone who knows God exists, because the Bible says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." And this man is wise. He knows God is there, but he's looking at life merely through human perspective, as though God has not done what he has done in this world. And from human eyes, he is absolutely right. It is foolish to pour your life into gaining wealth. It is foolish to pour your life into gaining fame. It is foolish to go seeking youth all the days of your life, to pour it into cosmetics and into fashion or into whatever else it might be. To live for those things truly is vanity, because as the wise man says, it comes to nothing in the end. We all go to the same eternal home of the grave. That's the bleakness of Ecclesiastes. And it's true that that is the case if nothing else is true. If the gospel were not true. But the encouragement is, Ecclesiastes doesn't stand alone. It gives us an insight into the foolishness of seeking life without God, but thankfully it comes in the middle of a larger book, or a larger set of books, which teach us what God has done. And there are so many verses of encouragement to us, that if we do remember our Creator, then our joy or our lives can be joyful despite the bleakness that comes in life. Let me just share a few of those verses. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Isaiah says, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." That's speaking of people who may be old. They may not be in the flower of youth. Nevertheless, their souls can mount up with wings like eagles if they wait on the Lord. Hebrews 13, verse 5 says, "He himself has said," that's God, "I will never leave you nor forsake you. Isaiah 46 verse 4 says, even to your old age I am he, and even to grey hairs I will carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and will deliver you. Psalm 71 says, O God, you have taught me from my youth, and to this day I declare your wondrous works. Now also when I am old and grey-headed, O God, do not forsake me until I declare your strength to this generation, your power to everyone who is to come. Psalm 73 verse 26, my flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. That's the end result of remembering your Creator, of understanding that although we grow old, although we are weak, although we are sinners, God has stepped down to us. God has stepped down and gained for himself a body, a frail body, a weak body like ours, so that he could raise us up to eternal life. It is because of what God has done that we have hope. The warning of Ecclesiastes is don't try to do it by yourself. Don't try to think you can save yourselves and by pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps you can gain some sort of eternal youth or some sort of salvation. It will not happen. Ecclesiastes 12 is coming to all of us if we live that long. But with God, there is hope. With God, there is salvation. Because Jesus came and he died and he took on himself all our griefs, all our pains, all our sufferings. So if we trust in him, we can look forward to an eternal life beyond the grave. Doesn't necessarily make the aging process easier to bear physically. That's the effect of sin in this world. We have to endure pain and heartache and suffering in many different ways. Nevertheless, we can still have contentment and joy in it. Not because of what we have done, but because of what Christ has done. And though our minds might fail, though our eyes might fail, our ears might fail, Jesus never does. And he will carry us all the way through. And that's why I've chosen as our final hymn, number 574. And I couldn't really think of a hymn more applicable, really. 574, how firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word. What more can he say than to you he has said, you who unto Jesus for refuge have fled? And particularly, I've chosen it for verse, if I can find it. Well, that's upsetting. There was a verse in the version I knew which said, even to old age, all my people will prove your eternal, unfathomable, unchangeable love. Fortunately, that's been cut out of this hymn book. But the words are still good. Verse 4 still applies. When through the deep waters I cause thee to go, the rivers of woe shall not thee overflow, for I will be with thee, thy troubles to bless, and sanctify to thee thy deepest distress. So let's close by singing 574.